Greetings, my brothers and our beloved sisters. Godfather here, Mike Side, one more time. We welcome you this evening. We are Blackmen Declare. We're here to provide to you a perspective from black men, not only for you, but for people all over this world. We have a very, we believe, timely conversation this evening as we want to chat about the military industrial complex. The military industrial complex, known to many as Mike, is a term that refers to the powerful alliance and mutual dependency between a nation's military establishment, its government, and the defense industry that supplies it with weapons, technology, and logistical support. The phrase highlights the political, economic, and social influence this relationship can exert, often beyond public oversight. Keep in mind that this concept was first popularized by U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower in his farewell address on January 17, 1961. Eisenhower, a former five-star general and supreme Allied commander during World War II, had deep knowledge of military needs. Yet, as president, he grew concerned about how much influence the arms industry and military establishment were beginning to wield over national priorities. His warning was clear. He said, as I quote, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist." At its core, the mic represents military dependency, influence on policy, and economic and social impact. We want to discuss this tonight with our panelists as we have in the virtual studio Cyber Key, the Peacemaker, and a special guest, J. Bernard Pitts, a man we call Ranger. So we are excited about this conversation this evening, and we're going to start off with another military alumnus, which is Cyber himself. And Cyber, before we begin to have a conversation with our illustrious guest, distinguished guest this evening, I'd like to hear just a little bit from you, a brief summation about your experience in this military industrial complex. Then we'll go to the Peacemaker for general comments about his perspective, and then we'll open up dialogue with our guest, Jeffrey Bernard Pitts. Cyber Key, come on, talk to us, brother.
Peace to my brothers, my colleagues in this fight for truth, freedom, justice, and equality. Good to be on with my esteemed brothers and our colleague, the Ranger himself. Looking forward to hearing his conversation. As a military veteran myself, I know my journey probably was a little different than Rangers, or at least his extended version, because I initially just went in for education purposes. Did my tour, did my duty, and got on out because I had other aspirations. I learned a lot. I never looked down on the time that I served because I actually learned a lot, uh, saw a lot, gained some valuable friends that I still have to this day. But I had a different idea on, what the military could do for me, what I could do for it, the things that I saw that were, coming down the pike that was going to happen, that I potentially didn't want no part of. Uh, but that just was my journey. But again, I actually have a favorable outlook on my time served, but it just long term, it just wasn't for me.
Peacemaker, I know you joke sometime about your involvement in the military industrial complex. but I know you had a little bit of involvement more so than me, because so I'm not going to laugh and even make any effort to belittle that compared to Cyber Key or to the Ranger. But come on, brother, how has it even affected your life? I know it has, based on the conversations we've had in the past.
Greetings to you, and greetings to everyone, our sisters and our brothers of Black Men Declare. Yes, definitely. I have. Uh, I did JROTC and ROTC in college, and when they started talking about how long I was going to have to serve or be in if they paid for college, I decided to opt out. So I opt out. But it's funny because in my career, that was my major tenet. Um, Being a facilities manager, most of my buildings house military DoD personnel. So I got to learn um, and got to deal with DoD as a or Department of Defense at the time. I got to deal with them from a perspective of understanding their culture, understanding their budget, and understanding some of the needs and some of the requests that they would have in order to maintain and stay in a facility or building, office building.
Powerful, my brother. Let me summarize what Eisenhower apparently was saying in his critique of the military industrial complex. He said, a risk of endless war, the military industrial complex may encourage unnecessary interventions, and research shows that no nation has been involved in more military conflict since 1950 than the United States of America. The misallocation of resources, prioritizing military spending over healthcare, education, or infrastructure. The budget for the military industrial complex in the United States of America is higher than all of the next 20 nations combined. And then the democratic oversight. The public has limited transparency into the military contracts, lobbying, and long term commitments. And since Eisenhower's warning, the military industrial complex has only expanded. And today it includes not only weapons manufacturers, but the Pentagon by also its cybersecurity firms, private military contracts, intelligence agencies, and global supply chains. The military industrial complex shapes much of the U.S. foreign policy and remains a central feature of debates about democracy, capitalism, and global security. I'd like to go to our guest for a minute, and you brothers will come behind me if whatever questions you have. But first, we'd like to give Jeffrey Bernard an opportunity to just share briefly about his experience, and then Brother Jeffrey will have each one of the other brothers come back, and we'll get a little deeper as we get into our conversation tonight. But in the first round, we'd just like for you to share with us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, a little bit about your collegiate experience, and how you first got into the military. And after that, we'll dig deeper into your military prior to military, in the military, and then your life after the military. So, welcome once again, Jeffrey Bernard. Why don't you come on and share with us a little bit about your macro experience? Come on, my brother.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, brothers, for allowing me to be a part of the Black Man Declare podcast on tonight. And it's a pleasure, it's an honor to be amongst men of valor. And not like my brother Quaid Aleem, uh, my career extended all the way to 22 years. But I grew up here in Atlanta, Georgia. Went to Frederick Douglass High School, graduated from Gordon High School. My son went there for 1 year. joined the military in 1977, and had the opportunity to either go in the military or accept a scholarship at Hampton Institute of Music, because I played in the band, I played several instruments. So that was something that I always wanted to do because my dad brother served in Vietnam. And not only that, I had a brother that served in the Navy as well. But with that being said, a military background, military family, I chose to go into the military. I had no idea that I was going to spend 18 years as a U.S. Army Ranger in the Ranger Regiment. I went in as a regular soldier to do regular things for 20 years and retire and then start a second career. That's what's the conversation with me and my dad. But how God has it that after about 4 years being in the military, made rank really fast, made rank made E6, which is staff sergeant, 4 years in the military, and that was unheard of during that time. From there, I had a colonel, Colonel Garfield, still remember him as to this day, from South Carolina. He served in Vietnam. He was Vietnam commissioned. Also, he was Delta Ranger from Second Ranger Battalion. He had every badge and every special operation school that you could probably think of. But he inspired me and told me that if he could get me all these schools, that I did not need to be in the regular army. So that's how I ended up going to Ranger School, Airborne School, Sniper School, and moving on to Second Ranger Battalion, which he served in Vietnam. And so he was my mentor. And right to this day, I thank him for uh, pulling me out of the regular army and putting me into Special Operation Command. And from there, I served, like I said, Second Ranger Battalion, also Ranger instructor, 3 out of the 4 phases of Ranger School, total of 18 years in Special Operation Command, long range surveillance. I started the F Company 51st LERPs. We started them in Germany back in 1989. They were deactivated after Vietnam. The whole unit got literally wiped out. And so we reactivated them in 1989, 6-man team, long range surveillance, 150 kilometers behind enemy lines, which we actually exercised those missions during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. 7 days before the war even started, we were already in place 150 kilometers behind enemy lines, dug in ground for 7 days. So extended military career. My last 3 years was military police, where I had several injuries to where I couldn't jump out of planes anymore. But only by the grace of God, He allowed me to continue my military career and serve. My last 3 years, I had a military police company for 3 years. And after that, I retired in 99 and then started my federal government in 2007, where I retired again from the federal government on the Department of Interior in 2014. I'm sorry, 2014. Amen.
Wow, what a powerful overview. Appreciate that. Cyber, what's on your heart tonight that you like to hear from the Ranger? Then we'll have the Peacemaker come back and add something, and then I'll come back and add something as well. But if we look at the backdrop of this military industrial complex, there are many things that have taken place, since that, and we want to get back into even some of the details of what our brother just shared. But that's a powerful reality already being behind enemy lines when a conflict starts. That was a pretty powerful comment, my brother. Come on, Cyber. What do you have for the Ranger that you like to find out?
First, I would like to say thank you for being on, my brother. And a note to our listener audience, I'm having a little technical difficulties in this location I'm in, so if I drop, I come back on and join the live. But my brother, you joined in the military. What was your initial thought like once you got in? You saw what it was about, and I know you went in at a time where blacks were just starting to make rank and stuff like that. How was that? Was it challenging for you initially, or was it had it already passed that phase of allowing blacks to do certain jobs to gain certain rank and stuff like that? What was that process like for you?
Let me tell you something. My first duty station was in Germany. 19 well, I went in there I went in 1977. So I was stationed from Germany from 77 to my first duty station 77 to 79. And during that time frame, it was still segregated. What I mean by that is when you the blacks hung out with the blacks, the Puerto Ricans hung out with the Puerto Ricans, the white hung out with the whites. Uh when you go into the dining facility, or as we call it in the army, the mess hall, you would see all the blacks sitting on one side of the mess hall. You would see the whites sitting on one side, and Hispanic. Some other Hispanics brothers would hang out with the blacks. So it was still segregated, uh, but uh, all of us, a lot of the in my unit, a lot of the platoon sergeants, squad leaders, all of those guys were from the Vietnam era. So they were still in. So they had made a transition from the Vietnam to regular, I'm gonna say from Vietnam, from combat to being a regular soldier. So what they actually did, and believe it or not, I'm come to thinking about it, most of the people in our platoon was black, and they were from Vietnam, and they were the ones who grabbed me by the bootstraps and said, okay, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to not only take care of yourself but take care of your soldiers first. So I think with that leadership, that carried on with me throughout my military career, because I've always been the one that my soldiers first and then come me. I lead by example. I lead from the front, not from the rear. So with that, and it always stands in my right to this day, I still think about Sergeant McKenzie. His name was Sergeant McKenzie, E7, Vietnam, had a big old scar on his face. He always told the story of what happened to him doing this hand-to-hand combat in Vietnam. So with those stories back in, you're talking about in 1977, and here it is, 2025. I still remember those stories. So I just share that in love.
That's powerful, brother. Let me inject this one thing. You know, you talked about the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was another example that concerned Eisenhower. It's called an expansion of the Cold War. And there was a massive increase in military spending, particularly on aircraft, helicopters, and chemical warfare, particularly Agent Orange. Defense corporations like Boeing, Lockheed, General Dynamics, GE, etc. And this MIC, the military industrial complex influence, was visible in the escalation of the U.S. government, with critics like Martin Luther King Jr. calling out the link between war, profiteering, and radical economic injustice. While you were there, you make mention about this yet still segregated reality. What was it? Was it any difference, though, when you will go into a conflict per se? And then Peacemaker, please come right after Brother Jeffrey speak, and then ask your question. But what was it like when you'd be in theater, as you say so often?
Let me tell you something. When we deploy, once those wheels are up, there's no color. There's no color. None. I did not experience it at all. We're one band of brothers, one mission, and get the mission accomplished. That's all that we're there for. So there's no personal endeavors, none of that. None of that take place, especially in special operation. Now, in the regular army, like I said, I only spent about 4 years in the regular army, so I never did get a chance to deploy with the regular army. All of my deployment was on the Special Operation Command. And when I say a band of brothers, it's a band of brothers. I got your back. Now, after you come back and the mission is over with, then everybody do their own thing. But there's still that commodity of teamship, fellowship, because You just don't know when the next balloon is going to go up. You don't know while you're at home after you just finished the mission that within the next 72 hours that you might be wheels up again. So we didn't have those issues like that, even though it existed, because I'm gonna give you a short scenario of what happened to me after I graduated from Ranger School, and I was assigned to Second Ranger Battalion. I was assigned to Charlie Company, 79th 5th. So I went there, met with the sergeant major because I went in as an E6 promotable to the battalion, kind of like unheard of. So when he took me to my company, the sergeant major had to report to the sergeant major. He took me to my company, to the first sergeant Waters. I never forget this conversation. We walked in the door. Sergeant major said, "Hey, first sergeant, here's the Sergeant Pitts here. Gonna be one of your new platoon sergeants." He looked at me dead in my face and said, "I do not want that kind in my company." Just like that. Now I had a choice. Either I lead a battalion, put my tail between my legs and leave, or I stand my ground. So I looked at the Sergeant Major Voice. I never forget him. I looked at him. I said, "Well, what company am I going to, Sergeant Major?" He took me over to Alpha Company. It's funny how God works. Alpha Company, 2nd and 75th Ranger. First Sergeant Bump was my Ranger instructor when I was going through Ranger School. When I walked through that door, and he was on the phone. He hung up the phone and say, "Sergeant Major, I want that Ranger right there as my platoon sergeant." So from that point, I took on in his company. I was his weapon platoon sergeant. And so, with that being said, and to make a long story short again, I ended up saving First Sergeant Waters' life over in Honduras doing counterterrorist missions where his company got pinned down. And so I ended up pulling him, and we ended up pulling quite a few of them out of a firefight. But later on in life, of course, he was the one who pinned on my E8 stripes.
Ranger, again, we all thank you, man, for joining us. I guess my question is very similar to Godfather's now. And I guess if we can kind of transition to now that you have been in for several years and now you are training and working with others. And as you said, there is no color difference when you are out on the battlefield. Can you explain some of the mental, I guess, exercises or some of the mental understanding that you have to have in order to be able to do that, to go out in the battlefield and it's about the mission and it's not about what color, but then when you come back to a time of peace or relaxation, there seems to be a great divide. Um, and I would think that it would be kind of difficult because at times you like, I was just with that guy, and now because we're no longer in conflict, we are not together or we're not as friendly as we should be.
Well, let me expound on that a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going by from what was established when I was there at Second Ranger Battalion. Okay, when I got to the battalion, okay, out of you're talking about 500 Rangers, it was only 6 blacks in the whole battalion. 6 blacks in the whole battalion when I got there. Okay, so with that being said, uh, yes, we were, I mean, what we would call battle buddies through thick and thin. Now, don't get it wrong. When we're off duty, when we are training, because a lot of our training, even when we come back from missions, we go right into training. So we really, maybe I led you the wrong way, but we really don't have time to really sit there and put prejudice and color while you're in the Ranger Battalion. If it's even noticed, you're gonna leave the battalion because at any given time, like I said, you can lose one life, or you can lose 30 lives, or you can lose 120 lives by one person mistake, by one person being, I would say, uh, not being a team player. But with the battalion, now I can't speak for the regular army that much, but for the battalion, you just don't have it. It's there, but it's not there. And so, even as a ranger instructor, it's not that many black ranger instructors, even though I said I was an instructor 3 out of the 4 phases. Well, the fourth phase that I didn't be an instructor was the mountain phase. And in that phase, it's 99% white instructors up there. It might be one or two blacks up there, but that's up there in North Georgia. So, not that nobody goes there, it's the fact is that the Ranger Regiment is not going to put Rangers in harm's way like that. They're not going to do it. And you're not going to find nobody like me volunteering to go up to Dahlonega to be an instructor. So, with that being said, even as in being an instructor, I mean, everything that you do from the battalion, that's a lifestyle. As a ranger instructor, those ranger students' life depend on you being on point. So you can't be out there, you know, mad at another instructor. You just don't see it. So maybe I misled you a little bit on that, but
No, no,
let me
no,
put it
no.
like this:
That
I didn't see it.
no, that makes sense. And I think that leads right into, um, I guess, being able to transition, because when 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 we hear about the Vietnam War, we hear about how soldiers were treated there, and then once they came home, then they was treated something. It was hard for them to find jobs. They weren't respected for being war veterans, and I can only imagine if someone had been in conflict, especially like the Vietnam War or Afghanistan War, and then you come home and it's like, okay, I'm treated like a second class citizen, but I see my buddy who was with me and they're being honored. So, that's some of the mental, I guess,
N-
the
No, no,
obstacles that we will have.
no, no, no. And you're so right, because this is why I'm a now I'm doing having veterans, but this is why I'm really how can I say biased to Vietnam veterans, because of that reason right there. When they came home, and my uncle was one of them. When they came home, they were spit on. They were All these things were done to them. Now, mind you, that was black and white. But I do understand what you're saying, because when some got home, the blacks, they were having a hard time finding jobs, adjusting, and the whole 9 yards. Where the whites, they gave them jobs or whatever, retrained them, however the case may be. But all of them was treated and mistreated like that. Baby killers. All kind of. I mean, you just gotta be able to, how can I say, none of us was there during the Vietnam War, but we actually seen it. And through Special Operation Command, you get to look at these videos. You get to learn from mistakes in the jungle warfare. You get to do all these type of things. So behind the scenes, we get to see what they were seeing and going through as far as the combat side of the house. But after the war was over, we wasn't there at the airfield when they landed. Now, in Afghanistan, no, you didn't get that issue right there. I don't think you did. But it's always going to be, and we're seeing it right to this day, that where there is a divide between color and in the military. It's always going to be that way. And it has been that way from World War I, World War II, World War III. I mean, not World War III, but the Korean Vietnam War, Korean War. and all the wars, Gulf War, all of these wars that have taken place, it's always been a segregated military, even though you find a way to fight together.
You know, that's interesting, Ranger, because what you just described is what, again, the research says Reagan era. In the Reagan era, in the peak of the Cold War, he increased the defense budgets dramatically, fueling the arms buildup against the Soviet Union. And the Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars, funneled huge sums into space missile defense research. That was just tremendous corporate growth. We know the corporations Lockheed, Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, Raytheon, they became household names. You had mergers and consolidations, acquisitions, creating this mega defense and all of these defense contractors. So by the late 1980s, critics argued that the military industrial complex was producing weapons not based on need, but based on profit motives. And this all of a sudden became the great concern. And then, of course, in the 1990s, in the post Cold War adjustments, you had the collapse of the Soviet Union. You had the Gulf War, as you just indicated. And then you saw the rise of private contractors like Halliburton, Blackwater for their security. And then the military industrial complex broadened to include not just weapon makers, but also service, logistics, and intelligence. And when you speak of Vietnam per se, specifically, is when Agent Orange was used in that conflict that caused problems mentally and physically to those people that still exist today. So, as you were mentioning earlier about the conflicts and the battles you were in, being behind enemy lines, what was the conversation, or was there conversation taking place about the brutal, brutal treatment of the Vietnamese people as well? I mean, we know what happened to many of the soldiers that came and were able to get back. We have some that we occasionally come on and chat on the prayer line that many of us are aware of, and they have tremendous post-traumatic stress disorders. So as you look back at that era and those that came a generation before you in that regard, can you give us maybe a comparative assessment of that mental anguish that they experience, especially when you look at what Agent Orange with that 1,4-dioxane did to the people? It's almost comparable to the dropping of that bomb on Hiroshima to end World War II. Not quite the immediate death, but death after the fact, because it lingered and it survived in those jungles over there in Vietnam. And then after you share that, I'd like for Cyber Key to come and then continue the dialogue with his questions and conversation.
Amen. Yeah. So basically, I mean, I'm gonna tell you right now. And the sad part about this is that going on the mental aspect of it, back in the day, in the Vietnam era, and even the Korean War, they didn't even call it post traumatic stress. They called it shell shock, if you remember the terminology. For those, Quade, I know Willie J probably, I don't know, Jesse, you might have, but they didn't even know and recognize it as PTSD. Now, getting to the aspect of the veterans that I'm working with, I've worked with so many of the veterans that was diagnosed with Agent Orange. And right to this day, I think out of the maybe 10 veterans that I've worked with, when I met them, they had maybe 10%, just 10, I mean, I'm sorry, 20% for Agent Orange. That's it. So, of course, through the new Biden Act, the PAC Act, I got them all the way up to 100%. But needless to say that out of the, I'm gonna say 10, 5 of them are deceased, and they all died from Agent Orange. So, with that being said, getting back to the PTSD part, when you're telling a soldier that have served in combat, when you're telling a soldier that has been, how can I say, affected by Agent Orange, and you're denying it as a country, because it took them forever to deny, I mean, to recognize that Agent Orange was actually literally killing not only the Vietnamese that were over there, but soldiers, not just ground soldiers. They finally realized the Air Force guys who was loading the bombs up, the pilots who were flying the bombs into those theaters and dropping them. So it was an environmental hazard in the air. So people that wasn't even near the combat zone right to this day now is being afforded claim for Agent Orange. If you were in theater, they're saying that you're entitled. So with all of that being said, the mental aspect, it is improved. I can say it's improved with PTSD, with all the counseling, the psychologists and psychiatrists. Uh, but it still need work, because even though with that you've had veterans to go complaining about issues with post traumatic stress, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Gulf War, whether it's Iraq War, no matter what it is. But a lot of them are not being treated properly. So guess what? They end up committing suicide. Suicide rate is really high when it comes to military soldiers that suffer from post traumatic stress. Now, I don't know the percentage, but I know it's high. So, with that being said, yeah, it's improving, but it's not there. It's nowhere near there, because there are soldiers right to this day that have served in combat and being denied post traumatic stress. I just share that in love.
My brother, this is a powerful conversation and dialogue, man. Because I actually had a couple of ways that I wanted to go, man. Because my brother Peacemaker touched on something, and then brother Jesse brought it back home to another conversation. But uh, my first question to you, like, all of those positions that you held in the military, um, private contractors. What are your view, or what is your view, or what is your thoughts on how private contractors are influencing, or maybe you don't think it's influencing the way or the direction of the military as is put together currently?
I think it is influencing the way the military is right now in this current state. Believe it or not, I was going to go work for Blackwater after I got out, uh, and I'm glad I didn't, because everybody know the end result of what happened and how they ended up. Uh, well, let me put it like this: they changed the name. That's what they did. They didn't change the concept, but they changed the name. So I think that it's a negative effect. I think this is me. There are billionaires that's tied to these companies. They are A lot of them out there doing what we would call in the Geneva Convention war crimes, uh, and they're covering all of that stuff up. So I've not, and I never have been a big pro, how you would say, private contractor out there on the battlefield. Never have. And I mean, I seen them when we was out there in Honduras doing counterterrorist missions. A lot of times they're in the way, but a lot of times they're gun happy, because I'm gonna say about 90% of those men that are hired by those companies, a special operation, they've been in several different types of conflicts, and they're just getting paid big bucks. I mean, you're talking about for 1 year they're getting paid about 200 to $300,000 a year tax free. So I mean, why not take that money and go out there and still have the opportunity to shoot and kill someone for free? I just share that in love.
Well,
Yeah, that's
that's a good segue into the conversation. The second piece of my question, as it relates to extremists, there was an article, and I was trying to find it while you were talking, as it related to extremists who were joining the military, getting specialized training, and then coming in your local police force. So being that you were in special forces, and I really appreciate your conversation on, being on the battlefield and it not, not existing on the battlefield. But what are your thoughts, or what did you pick up on, the extremists that may have joined with the special tech, or these articles say they normally come in and get specialized tattoos, to symbolize, that type of extremist, whatever group they're working with or whatever. Did you pick up on any of that, or did you hear about any of that?
I
What are your
picked
thoughts on it?
I picked up on it a long time ago. Your Secretary of Defense, I don't call it Secretary of War. Your Secretary of Defense has one of the biggest tattoos on his chest, one of the white extremist tattoos on his chest. So, and you could see the anger. You could see in the law enforcement that's happening with, and I'm just gonna say, people of color. They are just using so much force just to apprehend a black person or Latino or Asian or whatever, any race besides white. And they're using so much lethal force, and it's not necessary. But a lot of those, like you said, they're getting trained by the military. They're coming back out and joining the law enforcement, in their towns or cities or whatever the case may be, and that's giving them a free ram to actually kill, and that's what they're doing. And I mean, we're at a country right now that there's no check and balances in the law enforcement side of the house, none, zero. And I mean, for it to be a person of color, you should be afraid when someone pull you over. I don't care what state you're in. You should be afraid, because the bottom line is you don't know who that officer is, where that officer been, and what has pissed him off prior to him pulling you over. And a lot of those officers that are coming out of the military and going into the police force, they have not been, how can I say, in the special operation, we call it deprogrammed. They have not been deprogrammed. So,
brother. You said some powerful stuff there, and you know this since Eisenhower was warning in 1950 and 61, rather, it no longer makes generals and weapons makers. It's a vast ecosystem of the government, corporations, and private contractors. But I like to switch gears a little bit and here on a personal note, I've heard and we've heard sometime, but I'm sure our audience would like to hear about your personal experience where you yourself survived a fall from, an aircraft. And can you briefly share with us, and I'm sure the listening audience that will hear our conversation, how did you survive, as an extension of Cyber Key's question, how did you yourself survive that not only mental anguish but also the physical trauma you experienced when you had some malfunctioning of your equipment? So can you share briefly? So bring in a little personal piece into the conversation.
amen, amen. I sure can, and I could, I could take it all the way to the day, my brother. Back in 1987, we were out there in Florida, Elizabeth Drop Zone, training. Well, actually doing a combat operation, airborne operation, and beautiful day. The winds gusted, and I mean, I'm a very experienced jumper. I had right that time I had about over 500 jumps in static line. Had came from the Ranger Battalion to serve as an instructor down in Florida, and so we was actually the instructors we was training for. We was going to be doing a mission with one of the battalions. And so I went out the door. Everything was fine. The wind gusted, grabbed my chute. When I hit the ground, I hit the ground with my heel and neck. My chute, it opened, but it went behind me. And being an experienced jumper, if I had to pull my reserve, it would have actually tangled into my main. So I had no choice but to pull what we call the riser. That's the bottom part of the parachute, and pull it to my reserve to where it gave me a 45-degree angle, at least a 45-degree angle, while I was heading toward the ground. When I hit the ground, hit the heel, neck, blinked out. I felt my body moving, but I couldn't feel nothing. Then all of a sudden, I heard a thump. So that was a log on the drop zone that actually thumped me, but woke me up, but I couldn't move. I was already paralyzed. So, with that being said, I just saw uh, people trying to run step on my chute because I was still, the wind was still dragging me. And to make a long story short, with that, after the drop zone and the safety officers, they did all their inspection. I was drugged 500 yards, 5 football fields, and didn't have. Of course, they ripped my clothes off. I was medevac to Eglin Air Force Base. That's where we were at, and the chief surgeon actually told me that I'll never walk again. And so I had a conversation with God, with one tear in my eye. And the words that came out of my mouth was, Lord, I know you didn't bring me this far to leave me. And I just left those words alone. So as I was there for about 40 days, no surgery, no anything, just laying there. About 2 in the morning, a nurse came in my room, stuck me in my foot. I said her name was Nurse Angel. That's who she told me she was. And from there, I screamed. The floor nurse came in my room, I said, hey, look, your nurse just stuck me in the foot. She said, I'm the only one here. So from there, they took me to what we call down in physical therapy immediately. And they hooked me up to this big old giant TENS unit. It's an electrical unit. Well, if you notice, if you've seen the small TENS unit, just imagine it a large one for your full body. So for the next 3 to 4 days, I was doing the electrical therapy. And so before you know it, in about 45 days, I was back walking. Now, remember, I had no surgery. Now, this was back in 86. So 86, yeah, 86. Well, 87, I'm sorry, because I had just left the battalion. So I didn't have no surgery. I started back walking. So in 88, I started back jumping. So I jumped from 88 to 89, where we started the long range surveillance company. I went to Germany, back to Germany, had my 6-man team, took my 6-man team to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, came back in 92, was out running, as we call for fun, 20 miles, and I collapsed. When I collapsed, they medevaced me to Augusta. That's the spinal cord clinic for the military. So they medevaced me there. Within 72 hours, I was on the operating table. My surgery, within 72 hours, I was on the operating table. My surgery took, what was it, 12? How many hours was it? I forgot, dang. My surgery was about 18, 19, maybe 20 hours or something like that. That's what my surgery was. But in the process of doing the surgery, the neurologist that spoke with me, the one who gave me the ultimatum saying that you either have the surgery, there's a 50% chance you're going to come out paralyzed. If you don't have the surgery, there's a 50% chance you're going to be paralyzed. And we're going to do the surgery and it's not going to work. So, this is, like I said, I was definitely a praying man and had nothing but faith throughout my whole military career and even right to this day. So, I told him, I said, you know what? I'll do the surgery, sir. And he said, well, let me introduce you to your the surgeon that's going to perform the surgery, and it was a Asian guy. But I told him, I said, "Well, sir, look, no offense to you, but if you can't do the surgery, then I'm not going to have it done." So he said, "Well, this is my last one. I'm getting ready to leave. I'm getting ready to retire out of the military." I said, "Well, sir, I'm just saying I won't have it done then." So he said, "Okay, I'll do it." But then I told him this when because they had to, I had to go back up to be prepped. Prepping was like I looked like a stereo with wires all over my body. So when he prepped me and they were prepping me, he came in and I told him this. I said, "Sir, you know my background. If you don't perform this surgery, I'm telling you, I'm gonna fine you and I'm gonna take you out." He said, "Ranger Pitts." He didn't say first sergeant. He didn't say nothing. He said, "Ranger Pitts, I'm gonna do the surgery." So as they reeled me down, I still remember his scrub hat had the Mickey Mouse characters on it, and he said, "Count back from 100," and that's all I remember. And 17 hours later, I was out of surgery, titanium plate, 4 bolts, and still walking. And that's when I branch transferred to military police my last 3 years.
Cyber, you got any additional comments? That's a powerful personal testimony right there.
I just appreciate the brother coming on and sharing his experiences, because it does shed lights on a lot of things on how people see it that's actually going through it. And with his longevity, it weighs a lot more than some of us who, even though I was in for a short time, but because he was in extended and been through a lot, he sees it from a different angle. I've had my incidents when I was there. I was in the regular army. I didn't have that what we call gun hole mentality, because I figured, man, I had already escaped the streets, the guns of the streets, and the drugs and all of that, man. I want to just get some education. But I experienced a lot, man, and I saw a lot in a short time. But to hear this brother talk about his experiences and the things he saw is very powerful.
Well, I'm gonna come back to you in a minute, Peacemaker, Ranger. So, how did you evolve into your current ministry that you're involved in today? Can you share a little bit about what you're doing there?
Right. Yeah. And it's pretty powerful because I really never thought that I would probably be doing what I'm doing right now because I hate paperwork. That's number one. Number one, I hate paperwork. But and I started helping veterans honestly when I was working with the Department of Interior, tidbits or whatever the case may be. But fast forwarding to 2002, this VSO, well, she wasn't a VSO. She actually worked in benefits up in VA. And so for whatever reason, I kept getting her on the phone. And so she told me she was going to train me. And she said, maybe one day you're going to use this. But, fast forward, did my claim, got my 100%, started helping a few people that I work with at Department of Interior. So when I retired in 2014 from Department of Interior, in 2015, the Holy Spirit woke me up and said, "Hey, you're going to help veterans." And so I was like, okay. So I went to make out all these cards and sayings. He's like, "No, I didn't tell you to do that. You just need to just allow me to do what I do." My first veteran that I started with, you're looking at him right there, Peacemaker. Not Peace, the Peacemaker, yeah, 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 Quave. No, Cyber. Quay was the first one that I actually did. so after that, Quay sent me to someone down in Louisiana. Louisiana sent me to someone over here. So it went on and on and on. So right to this day, it's probably over 600 veterans, if not completed helping and still helping. And like I said, I just got 3 new veterans on yesterday, 2 days ago, and all is a word of mouth. It's not no cards. It's no me going out soliciting. God said that that's not how I wanted you to do it. And the powerful part of this is, see, when you take man out of it and let go and let God do it, then God get all the glory. See, I don't get any glory from this because guess what? I haven't passed out no cards. I haven't done any of that because he said don't do it. So being obedient, then of course you get the benefits of the rewards that comes with it. And those rewards are, wow, it's crazy when I say this. And thank you, Holy Spirit. Just think, I know people all around the world, because there's veterans I have in Africa, all around the world that are veterans that I have had some part of, and God allowed me to, have some part in their life with VA claims. Yep.
Beautiful. Come on, Peacemaker.
Uh, just want to briefly ask you a question, and you can give a brief answer. Um, I know with our current administration that there has been a lot of um, the Joint Chief of Staffs. They are. I don't think that they are. They're not as awarded or experienced. That's the word I'm looking for, as previous Joint Chiefs of Staff. Um, can you just give your opinion briefly about that? And do you feel what's your feelings? Someone I would assume that someone who has served and seen action and what have you would want somebody that's in charge to have similar attributes, and not somebody that's just sat behind a desk.
Well, you can sit behind a desk and still be effective, but the problem is you have lawless. Okay, these people. Okay, when you join the military, I don't care what your rank is, you're sworn in to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. And here's the crazy thing: foreign and domestic. And right now we have a domestic terrorist right there in the White House. Period. And we're not doing anything because he removed all the people that can give him check and power. Okay, so right now he have lawless. So whether they have experience or not, and which they don't have it at all. But the main thing that he wanted in place is lawless. If you're loyal to me, you're gonna survive this ride. But the sad part about it is they all gotta face God at the end of the day. Because the bottom line is, and you know what? We see it happening right now, that things are slowly being shaken up with illness, sickness. All of these things are going to be taking place. So guess what's going to happen to those lawless? They're going to lose just as much as they did when they raised their hand to a dictator. I'm just going to say it just like that. So that's how I feel about it. I really feel that there's no check and balance. He is destroying not only the military but this country. And there are a few military generals that are standing up, but you know what? They're standing up, but they're leaving, and so they really have no choice. And he started that early on, and he said he was going to do this during the elections. He said he was going after everybody. Nobody believed him. I just share that in love. Good point.
Powerful, powerful, brothers. This has been just a powerful conversation and bring your pitch. We just really appreciate your openness, your candor, and your experience. And I want to give my other brothers, is there any lingering thing on your mind before we close out our conversation tonight? It's been very powerful, brother. Either Cyber or Peacemaker, anything on your heart you want to share or last questions for the Ranger?
Yeah, that that man, he's hitting on so many topics, man. It's almost like the Crawford Canelo fight, man. He's just he's tagging him, man. He's making some connections. And so he brought that up, and my brother Peacemaker let him right into it, man. And I, we all love this country despite its flaws and despite, uh, even though sometimes the country don't, a lot of times the country, or never, so some people feel never the country never loved us back. But my challenge or my question is like, when or do you think there ever be a time where the military sees something like what's happening now and say, you know what, we're not going to listen to that? Do you think that's a possibility in America like it is in other countries?
You know, I that's a good question. Right now, I could say I don't see it, but there are a few, and I'm gonna call it like it is, in the blue states that are standing up to this with the reserve units. So I equate it, I think we're at a 50-50 right now. I really think we're at a 50-50. But it's scary. It's scary because it's almost like the military is operating in fear. And we shouldn't be operating in fear. We shouldn't be operating in fear. So I just share that in love.
Yeah,
Peacemaker.
I just want to say, man, thank you for your service also. And from what I've seen, and just to briefly what you just said, why is it that having National Guards men or people go out and patrol the streets when that's not what they was trained to do? What would you say to somebody that was, you know, was in the National Guards and they saying, I want to go and serve, I want to be obedient, I want to be, do the right thing. But we weren't trained to go out and walk the streets. We were trained to go and take over territories by any means necessary. What would you say to that young person, maybe 19, 20, that's now just they or somebody that's been in and they're now, saying this is not what we was trained to do.
Well, first of all, the Reserve and National Guard is for disasters that take place uh, in their city or state or whatever it may be. To federalize, to federalize the National Guard, just as he did in D.C., is actually putting them under control of the federal government. That's the difference. And the sad part about this is you have these governors, mayors that's sending them to DC from different states now to be federalized. And nobody's never thought of this. But when you send them to DC and you federalize them from different states now, I'm not just talking about the ones that he just did in DC. When he send them back to their state, guess what? They're still federalized. So they're not state anymore. They're federalized. So they're under control of him. So this is the playbook right now that he's setting in place. This is what he's trying to do. Once he get them to DC, we federalize them, send them back to even just say Chicago, send them back to Atlanta. Because governor here in Atlanta sent, guess what? The National Guards to DC to be federalized. So when they come back here and Donald Trump say he want to take over Atlanta, but they're federalized. They're not ran by the state anymore. So this is where we at. So it's going to be hard for you to tell a 19-year-old, or here's the deal. Most of those people, they're weekend warriors. They're weekend warriors. Half of them are probably bankers, half of them making six figures. But now they've been federalized to come to DC. And the really sad part about it is he only holding them for 29 days. If he takes them past 30 days, he got to pay them. He's sending them back 29 days and bringing new in. But he could still federalize them, though. He don't have to pay them. It has to be 30 days or more to be paid. But to
Wow.
federalize them, you bring them and you federalize them and you send them back to the state. I share that in love.
Whoa. That's powerful, brothers and sisters. We just sincerely appreciate you tonight, Ranger, and sharing openly as you have, and the ministry that you are involved in. And I didn't know that Cyber had been your first case. That's a beautiful connection.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I knew there was a beautiful relationship, but I really didn't know that. So thanks for sharing that. And I want to remind our audience tonight to hit that like button, hit that subscription button, share this with friends, neighbors, co-workers, get it out there on social media to hear the story, although brief, of a real ranger, someone that's been out there in theater, that survived, that was injured, that was then resurrected by God Himself. And I've seen that evidence of that surgery in our brother, and he and I, as the Cyber Key, we've done many things together. But it warms my heart to see that you are still doing your thing in ministry and sharing with the people. And so we just want to invite all of you to come back and join us the next time. And perhaps, Ranger, we'll have an additional show with you to come back and share your perspective as we see what we transition to here in America. Some say that we're seeing the downfall of the imperial giant. And so we know it's going to be sad for many. But we thank God that we have people, have men like you who have experienced the racism, the bigotry, and all of that. And it's encouraging to hear that at least when you're in theater, you have experienced a moment of mutual respect, mutual understanding, and mutual commitment to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Until next time, this is the Godfather, Mike Side. Peace out.